Jenny, say action.
No. This is the story of how we met. And when people say, how did you meet your husband? I always say, my mom met him in Alaska. But we're going to give you the longer version because we really like this story.
So we're starting with...
Way back.
So when I was...
Long time ago.
So when I got out of high school at 18, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. And so I just got a job. I just got a job at a resort in my hometown in Pennsylvania, and I worked third shift, and I did that for almost a year. And then besides my Volkswagen obsession, I also somehow, I still don't know how, but it just happened. I guess life happens. You know, all of a sudden I come with an Alaskan obsession, even though it was really far away from me. So there was a newsstand that I used to go to that's no longer in business. Like probably a lot of newsstands. And besides buying a hot Volkswagen and Volkswagen Trend magazine, I started to buy Alaskan magazines. So the job I had was just simply a job. It was just a job to, you know, to appease my parents per se and make a little money. And I did buy at the time a new little Isuzu pickup truck. And so I had a truck. And when I started looking into Alaska, there in the back, there was ads for seasonal workers. And so I applied. And I got a contract for a job. It was a simple job. It was just at a cafe. It was like a bus person, dishwasher person. But I was more about the adventure. You know, I was 19 at that time. And so I accepted the job and signed the contract and had a start date and all that stuff. And then when my job at the resort ended, I loaded my little Isuzu pickup truck and I drove from eastern Pennsylvania to Alaska.
And in the meantime, I was 16 and living in Arizona, and it was the first summer that the whole family had been together because we had moved separately because of school and stuff. And so my mom said, well, I'm going to go and work in Alaska this summer because it's too hot here. And my dad said, okay, I'm going to stay here and work because that's what I do. And my sister went to California to hang out with her friends there. And then they shipped me to North Carolina, where my uncle was in the Army. So we all went our separate ways. My mom goes up to Skagway, Alaska, and she's the secretary, right? Secretary to the manager of the hotel.
Right.
And then she gets to meet everybody practically who works at the hotel, and she's in charge of depositing their mail and their paperwork and stuff like that. And so before you had just started, someone fell.
Well, so when I drove up there, because that's kind of an interesting story. I mean, 19 years old and no cell phones and just had a map and I'd never been obviously that far. So I drove up there. I drove up towards the Montana border, thinking I was going to cross Montana into Banff Provincial Park in Canada, and then work my way up to Skagway, Alaska there. But when I got to the border, and I was 19, I only had so much cash on me, and it was just because I didn't want to have a lot of cash on me. I mean, I had the money to get there, but for some reason, the Canadian Border Patrol people, they wanted me to go back to Shelby, Montana at the time. I mean, that's where it was, and to get out like another, I don't know, $400, just so I had enough money that they felt comfortable letting me in. And if I broke down, I could address any issues and still make it to my destination and not get stuck in Canada, which maybe that happened, and maybe it still does. So I backtracked to Shelby, and reminder, I was 19, and it kind of made me mad a little bit. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go on to Washington, and I'll cross over in the state of Washington. So I got to Washington, and so I was in the town of Bellingham, and that's where I drove to from Shelby, Montana. And there's a ferry system where you could drive your vehicle onto the ferry, and they would float you up to southeastern Alaska. So I thought, I'll do that, right? But you had to have a ticket. So I was on like a standby list, and I was like in a long line of people and cars, and I didn't get on, which was fine. So I met a guy, Anthony from Wisconsin, and he was a little older than me, and he had a job as a chef up in Denali National Park. So we thought we'd buddy system, you know, he had his car, I had my little truck, and we buddy system up to kind of watch each other and work our way up together. Which, you know, once again, I was 19, I thought that was a great idea. So when we got to the border, since we didn't get on the ferry, and I was, green to the world.
Innocent.
Yeah. So, I didn't do much of, I didn't do much of anything, but, so he asked me, so we went up to the border patrol in Washington going into Canada. And he said, here, before we got up there, he said, here, hold this bag. And I didn't know what it was. And because they stopped and they, in a sense, motioned me through and then asked to kind of do a search on him. And he was afraid of that. I don't know, because of what he had in the bag.
What was in the bag?
Well, so lo and behold, we both got through with no problems. And then we stopped in Canada and he asked for the bag back. And it was a ham and cheese sandwich. And
It was a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos. So,
right, there's a bag of a substance I'm going to have to say on YouTube. So I gave it back to him, and we continued on our way, and then we got up to a certain point, and I branched off and headed towards Skagway, which was a town, I think it still is, of about 500 or 600 people, and then of course with the cruise ships in the summer, they bring 10,000 in, and they need help. Obviously, they need employees. So that's where I headed. So I drove into the town of Skagway, which was like 5,000 miles or 5,500 miles, I can't remember. And
the border of Canada.
No, from Pennsylvania to Skagway.
Oh, yeah,
It's like 5,500 miles. I mean, it's a long drive, and but I was all about the adventure, and so it was inevitable that I meet.
No.
So it was inevitable that I meet my future mother-in-law, who I didn't know at the time. Because she was a person that you had to fill out your, employment paperwork with, like W-4s or whatever it was. And also, she was a person that I got my mail from. And, I came from a regular home and, I wasn't running from anything. I was just, 19 looking for an adventure. So I was excited to in a sense, live this and for my family. And so I was, excited about, getting mail and sending mail. So it was important, necessary.
That was before email.
Yeah, that's before email. And, well, I mean, probably wasn't before email,
well,
but.
Before emails were popular.
Right, and you can do them on your phone because phones didn't,
You didn't really have, it was right. Before, this is 1990. 1990.
Right. So, I mean, it was a while ago. Yeah. But, so it was inevitable that I meet my, didn't know, but future mother-in-law. And Skagway was, it was a neat little town. I mean, if some of you might have been there, we hope to go back and take Jenny as kind of a bucket list item, but I'm not sure if that'll happen. But I hope so. We got some time. But so it was kind of like a college town in the sense of there's a lot of kids coming from Oregon and Washington that were up there for the summer to work, whether it was in the cruise ship industry, like a port town like Skagway or Juneau or Sitka, or you worked in a fishing, a fishery or a fishing boat, just because that's the time to make the money up in Alaska. But so I met my mother-in-law, and it was, like I said, it was a party town, and I wasn't into that. I was there. I rode my bike. I remember I had a mountain bike at the time, and go hiking, yeah, and just I worked a lot. I mean, a co-worker. So there was two of us to cover the two different, the shifts or whatever. So I think he was from Washington or Oregon, I can't remember. But like within a couple of days of him getting to Skagway to work, he'd fallen off a cliff. Like seriously, where they had to helicopter him out. And I don't know if he ended up in Juneau or they flew him back to Washington. But so they asked me if I could, in a sense, cover my shifts and his shifts for as long as I could until he came back or until I, couldn't do it anymore. So I said sure, and so I think that made an impression on my, mother-in-law to be in the future. But that I was a hard worker, and yeah. So too, I had the great experience of when the other worker came back after he was healed, and I was back to working my regular days and having some time off. There was an opportunity to take to work on a ferry boat that went from Skagway to Juneau.
It was called the
Mayweather. So too is Juneau and Skagway and Sitka and Haines. They were all on the Lynn Canal, so it was all just not little, but it was a boat ride down in the Lynn Canal that you connected all these little places. Because like Juneau you couldn't drive to, and Skagway you could. I think you could in Haines or Sitka or one of them or both of them. But so yeah, so I just had a great summer and experiences, and then my mother-in-law kind of adopted me because I wasn't into the partying scene.
He was a good boy.
Yeah, I just kind of did my own thing and worked and rode my bike and kind of was, content in, not being part of it. I think I played basketball. And
that summer they started hanging out because you were kind of like the son that she never had. He was getting a lot of mail. Your dad wrote to you pretty much every week, and you wrote home a lot. And so she just discovered what a great person that he was. And then when he decided to drive home, she made sure that he had...
The season was over.
Well, the season was over, so now it's September.
Beginning of.
And so she made sure he was had some food for the road and wanted to make sure that he got home safe to Pennsylvania. It's kind of like, son and mom, and just making sure and that they were okay. And I think my mom called your mom. I think so, yeah. To make sure, okay, he's leaving.
Yeah.
And then you actually drove straight from Missouri.
From Wyoming. From Gillette, Wyoming.
From Wyoming to Pennsylvania.
So I'm so excited to get home.
And the story was that his mom, she is a night owl, and so she was up ironing.
Yeah.
She told me. So she was up ironing. It was like 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. And then he comes walking in and scared the Jesus out of me.
Because I looked like I'd been up for, I think, Wyoming. 40 hours and 1,800 miles, because that's what it was. And I was just so excited to get home. And, of course, I had gifts and stories and all that. And it was just a great adventure. And
so my mom came home and, school starting, just regular. So when she came home, she showed me a picture of him. And as you may have guessed, he's very tall. And so she showed me a picture of him, like, real far away. And he had longerish hair, and you had a mustache.
Right, because I just drove home.
So I was like, no, this was in Alaska. This was a picture she had taken of you in Alaska. Right. So I was like, who's this guy? But then she showed me his class picture, and he's pretty cute. So I thought, well, he's cute. So then my mom said, I think you would have a lot in common with him because we both played basketball. She just felt like we would be good friends. And so we started writing to each other. Yeah, like a big brother. So she said, you should write to him and see, correspond and be like a pen pal. And then you started calling. We would call like Wednesdays and Sunday.
Right. But
every once in a while. And then what?
Well, I think, maybe a little bit of phone calls, but I think it was correspondence. And then that's where the invitation to come out for Christmas of 1990 into 91.
And then my mom said, as long as you fly out, she didn't want him to drive out because... Right. Why did you decide? We were talking about that. Why decide to drive to Alaska?
Well, I think I was working somewhere and I only had so much time off, and if I drove, it would have cut into the whole trip. So I don't know. I'd never flown, I don't think.
Oh, tell them how you didn't bring your bike.
Oh, well, so when I drove to Alaska, and like I said, I was really into biking, and I still am. I just, we get older and we can't do the fun things as much. But so for some reason, I had a pickup truck and I didn't put my bike in the back of it. So I got to Alaska, and of course, there was all kinds of roads and trails to ride on, and so I didn't have my bike, so I had my dad ship it up to me. And
after you had driven.
After I'd driven there, and I could have had my bike in the back. But, you're young and you live and learn.
So I invited him out for Christmas, Christmas break, and then he flew out for Christmas.
To Tucson, Arizona.
And bugged me for 10 days.
Yeah, because I was 19 and acted like a 19-year-old. Right. Well, I guess I was turning 20. And she was 16, right. and I was just like a big brother, and
he's funny, and teased me, and stuff like that. Yeah. But then when he left, I said to my mom, you know what? I think I'm going to marry him. And she said, not now. You're 16 and in high school. So we just continued. I just really, really liked him, and I thought you were a good person. Yeah. And all the people in my high school were stupid. Well. And then you, like the idea of like you knew like a cute boy that lived in Pennsylvania. It's just kind of romantic a little bit. Yeah. So we continued to talk and write and talk on the phone. And then you decided you were going to go to Alaska again. You were going to go to college there in Fairbanks.
Right. So as I got a little older and I decided I wanted to pursue further education, I still had the Alaska bug in me for whatever reason. And so I applied to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and I got accepted, and off I went.
And then in the meantime, my mom and I went up together the following summer, and we worked in Skagway, and I had his job. I was a busser at the same restaurant. And then I think that was the next year you went up to college. Right. And then I went up to Alaska by myself and worked at the hotel. And then I stayed later in the season, and I went up to meet him in Fairbanks. So we've never been to Skagway together, but we have been to Alaska together in Fairbanks. In Fairbanks. So then I went to visit him. Now it's probably October because there was a ton of snow. I remember. Because it was late in the season, so it was probably the beginning of October.
Right.
So I went up to see him at school.
Right, because you were thinking about maybe going there, because now you're like 18.
I liked Alaska too.
Yeah. And you were like 18-ish, 19-ish, because I was 23.
Yeah.
So 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 I was going to class there, and she was there for probably 4 days or something like that, and I was still just kind of not really sure of what was going to happen or whatever, and she was trying to figure out what college she wanted to go to, and I was at a point too where I was there for I think 2 years, and I was getting maybe a little homesick. And so I decided to transfer to a school back in my hometown, which in hindsight, I wish I hadn't, but life is life.
Right. And then that's when we started, I think, calling more often. So then you would call me Wednesdays and Sundays, and then we would come out and visit. Like I came out here to visit for Christmas break.
Right.
And then you came out to a couple times. We had moved to California by then.
Right.
And you came to visit. And then I had opportunity to overstay a visit in Poland. My uncle, who had lived in North Carolina, was stationed in Poland, and so my mom and I went to Poland, and I stayed longer because back then you could extend your ticket and it was fine. Right. I don't know if you can do that now. And so he called me, and by then we weren't boyfriend girlfriend. We were just really good friends.
Well, we were really good friends, and then I was coming, a
really close friend. Like you were my really good friend. Right,
and I was coming to the realization that, cause I really hadn't thought about marriage at all up until that point, and I kept on thinking if I would get married, because I was all about the adventure, what would that person be like? And I kept on coming back to all the character traits that Dagny had,
right.
And then I think I was starting to get a little bit worried that, with her, getting older and, traveling to places that, instead someone else would swoop her up. So I started to act on, what my thoughts were, I guess.
No, but then he called me. Remember, you called me in Poland, and I felt like you had a list. And it turns out later you had called my mom and said you wanted to call me in Poland. And this is 1994, 5.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, make a list so you're not running up the phone bill because it's long distance.
Right.
And so I felt like he was like, what is the food like? What is the weather like? It was like very like, okay, how are you? And I was coming back. It was in November. I was coming back. And so I'm on the phone and I said, I'm going to tell him I love him in case my plane crashes. Then I could say, he'll know that I had unacquainted love for him. Mm-hmm. So I remember ending the conversation like, all right, I love you. And he said, thank you. And then I came back.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about marriage and like we want to get married and.
Right. Well, we started to move it in a sense of out of the brother sister friends thing into
good
more
friend,
of our future together as husband and wife.
Right.
So that's kind of how that and then something that my mother-in-law kind of jokes about now is she wanted subconsciously she wanted us to be married. She wanted me to be
she knew we would be a good fit,
right? But she thought that we were going to move to California and not that I was going to take her daughter to Pennsylvania, which I didn't take anybody anywhere.
Right.
It's just it's just how life played out. Dagny graduated from the same college that I graduated from here in Pennsylvania, and this is just where we live. And yes.
So that's the story of how we met. My mom met him in Alaska.
And now it's been 26 plus years later.
Yeah.
We have, our love of our life, Jenny, and and this story just continues. So yeah, it's just it's just not your typical story. It's kind of a neat story, and the people that we've shared it with, just here in our home state that like don't know it or don't know us. They're always kind of interested because it's just not your normal story. We didn't meet in high school. We didn't meet in a bar. We didn't meet in college. I had to drive 5,500 miles. For some reason.
Well, things line up. Things are for a reason.
Right. Things happen for a reason. And and I was 19. Like I often think when I make that trip now.
Would you?
Well, I mean, I don't.
I think you would because you have a cell phone, GPS,
right, and the excitement. But just life is different. It's just not feasible now. It's like one of those things like. You encourage young people to, to be adventurous when you're young, because when you get older, life gets busy. You have careers and responsibilities, and you only get 2 weeks of vacation a year or whatever it may be. You just don't have, the opportunity to just stop one job and have a 2-month gap to have an adventure. But so if any youth are out there watching, or if any of you have youth or grandkids or kids, encourage them to be adventurous when they're young, because as we all know, when we get older, it's just not that easy. So, yeah, that's the story.
That's our story.
That's
we
our
hope
story.
you enjoyed it.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments, you please post them below, and we'll try to address them. It's a big story. It really is, and like I said, we're 26 plus years later. So
we got married when we were 10.
We got married. And also too is just on a side note, we got married here in Pennsylvania. It was one of the worst blizzards that we'd ever had.
We got married during the blizzard of '96. So I had 12 relatives come from Arizona, and literally.
Yeah,
like
36
inches of snow.
Right.
And so all my relatives think we have snow year round. And everyone came except for one relative couldn't get out of their driveway. But it would have been like 2 weeks of snow, just constant snow. And I think that's why everyone decided to come to our wedding. So we got married in January because it was during college break. That was the reason I picked.
Well, and also we don't necessarily like the heat.
Well,
it was
going to be 4th of July.
Or July wedding.
And our friends got married in July, and it was it was terrible. I said, I'm not sweating.
You'd be wearing a tux and a wedding dress, and it'd be 90 degrees with high humidity.
No, thank you.
And we prefer the cold, in all fairness.
So then we got snow, a lot of snow. So that was fun too.
So it's a fun story. But yeah, please comment, and share, and any questions, please post below, and we'll address them if need be or whatever.
All right.
So, all right.
We'll see ya.
See ya.